Hi and welcome to the Back of the Nest Deadline Day special. We're live for more than 2 hours to cover all the incomings and outgoings as the 11 p.m. deadline approaches. It's fair to say that the window has been underwhelming so far, but can Palace pull off a late recovery to boost Roy Hodgson's squad? Only time will tell.
Back of the Nest Daily Transfer Podcast.
Right, welcome to our first live show in a very, very long time. Let's see how it goes. But hopefully we'll be with you for the next couple of hours talking all things transfer window. Not been the most inspiring window so far. With me at this moment in time, and we may be joined by others throughout the course of the show, I have Mr. Nicholas Gillard. Hi, Nick.
How you doing? All right?
Yeah, fantastic, mate. I was in a fantastic mood earlier, and hopefully loads of people heard me swearing before the show went live as well. But yeah, hey, we're on. Yeah,
We're on.
Anyway, good to be joined by you. Looking forward to your insight, and also looking forward to Mr. Chris Clark's insight as well. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Chris. If this window's as successful as it looks like it's going to be, then I think we're going to have to cost special 50p, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, genuinely, when we started planning this, we expected something very, very different. Lots of things were shaping up quite nicely, and it's been a very difficult 24 hours, and it's going to take an awful lot of effort for Palace to pull something out of the mess that we're currently in. But fingers crossed we do. We've seen some movement out today, which we'll talk about shortly. So, maybe that gives us a little bit of space in the squad to bring a couple in, but obviously it's been well reported some of the deals we've gone after and what's happened there. So, but fingers crossed for some good news before the window does that thing that it does, the slamming shut thing, So I think probably a good opportunity for us to just confirm the news that we've got so far. We're looking at the window as a whole. We're not talking about obviously specifically the last 24 hours or so, but the incomings are very, very light. Those of you who've been keeping up to date with all our transfer podcasts and our recent shows, we might be going over some old ground here. But in terms of this show and this lineup, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about the players that we have brought in, such that they are at this stage. And the first and main one is obviously Cenk Tosun, signed from Everton on loan with a potential to a permanent move. Player we've been after for a long, long time. Typically, he's played a game and a half for Palace and is now injured until I think the 22nd of Feb he's due back. Technically, that means he misses the Sheffield United game only because he couldn't have played against Everton anyway. But definitely made an impact particularly in the Man City game. Looked like a very, very good signing and one that Roy was keen to point out was very much something that Dougie Freedman convinced him on, and a good job he did. Thoughts on that signing, Chris?
Well, initially I wasn't keen. Like a lot of the more salty Palace fans, I took offence at his having made statements to say things along the lines of, "Well, I didn't want to go there anyway. I've now gone to a better club," when he went to Everton. But actually, looking at the way he performed when in his debut for us, I thought he was actually exactly what we need, making the runs that you want to see. And I'm optimistic about his time with us, as long as he can stay fit. I say stay fit, get fit, and then play some games for us. That'd be nice to see, because he looked good. He nearly won me £400 in that game against City as well, but less said about that the better.
I think, to be honest with you, he saved you there from that with that £400 because we all know where that would have been spent. Probably immediately in the after the game, you'd have been in the Pawsons and drinking that place dry. So probably for the best, mate. Nick, your views. You're often a hard man to please, but striker wise, as did Cenk do it for you?
That first game, he was fantastic, wasn't he, scoring on his debut? But against Southampton, that miss was appalling. We should have scored, and it could have changed the game. I mean, he decided to shoot from the edge of the area rather than taking it forward a little bit more when he had nobody near him, and or he could have squared it to Wilf. So who knows? It might be just early days for him. But fingers crossed, something will come good, because we really need somebody to put ball in the onion bag, don't we?
We absolutely do, and good use of onion bag there. So I thought I'd leave it a few minutes just for people to join us live, because obviously the stream tends to take a bit of time to catch up and things like that. So let's get the admin out of the way now as well. So obviously, if you do want to get in touch with the show today, one of the best ways to do that is to leave us a WhatsApp voice message. So if you use the number 0203 575 1266, that's 0203 575 1266. Stick that in your contacts, and then use WhatsApp to leave a voice recording. Just press the little microphone, hold it down, say your piece. That will drop in producer Mikey's inbox, and we'll potentially be able to use that on the show. Nick, you're interrupting me during the admin.
No, I was just laughing at myself because I had to message people to say, how do you work this thing? And you explained it. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'm really thick, aren't I? Yeah, just hold down that thing with the microphone and talk. You don't have to try and ring them or anything. Just leave the message in there.
Yeah, you called the number, then complained it didn't go to voicemail. So you made me
Yes.
feel an awful lot better about my struggles with modern technology, I have to say. But we're also on the socials today. So on Instagram, we are at Back of the Nest CPFC. On Twitter, at Back of the Nest. On Facebook, just search Back of the Nest and you'll find us. And, well, no coincidence, if you search Back of the Nest on YouTube, we've got a YouTube channel there too. And if that all scares you, we've also got an email address. It's hi@backofthenest.com. So get your comments in there, and we've got people in the background who should be able to pick those up. And we may well get to your comments later on in the show, well, and throughout the show. You both got your hands up now.
Well, this one isn't an admin point, but it's just merely to say that, like in real life at home games, DR will likely be joining us a bit later than the start that's been advertised. So looking forward to hearing from him in due course.
Lives yards from Selhurst Park, yet gets there after the game kicks off. Don't know what his problem is other than being a teenager, I guess. But yeah, I think his wording as to why he was joining us late today was something like he's in the middle of a sticky situation. So I wonder what that could possibly mean. If you want to speculate, contact us on the socials. But hopefully DR will be joining us shortly. And yeah, hey, you guys all know DR now. He's an entertaining guy, so looking forward to it. So anyway, yeah, this will obviously be available as a podcast if you want to listen back, and maybe you will if we do some fantastic business late in the window. But as things stand, that's not happening. And we've talked about the confirmed incoming of Cenk Tosun, and sorry, I've just been distracted by a producer message claiming we're all muted. I'm pretty sure I'm speaking. Interesting. So we're going to have some technical issues throughout the course of this show using the software that we're using. So if you hear me sounding confused, it's probably because of that. But I'm going to plough on regardless. So we've talked about Cenk Tosun. In terms of the other incomings, I mean, really, he's also an outgoing as well, which we'll talk about in a bit. But Scott Banks, player we signed from Dundee United, came through their youth academy. He made some first team appearances and impressed, but refused to sign a new contract and was kind of frozen out there. And it was a deal we were looking to do in the summer on a new contract, but in the end, it seemed that we decided it was best to get him out of the club, and it's pretty apparent why we did that now, because we've loaned him straight back out to Allo Athletic to get some game time. But an interesting sign, again, one we talked about in the pods already. But let's dive in there. So Nick, it's an interesting one in terms. It's clearly a player that Friedman would have scouted with his connections north of the border. Roy very much pointing it out that it's an academy signing, but an exciting attacking talent. There's some good videos out there on YouTube, including a goal of the season for Clyde. The sort of signing we like to see, really, isn't it? Looking to the future.
It is. I've always spoken about on the Love Sports show about the age of our squad, so it's good to get youngsters in. He's had a lot of good comments, and from Scottish supporters as well. What's interesting though is a lot of people are saying, "Oh, we'll only end up in the under-23s," and looking at some of the players that have gone out, which you'll speak about soon. We kind of need to fill that squad up as well, don't we?
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, it's interesting where we've seen at times this season where the under-23s and even the under-18s have been very thin on the ground players because they've been travelling with the first team squad, and there's also been a recent tournament where we've seen players go away as well. So we do look thin on the ground the whole way, but that does mean some of the younger players end up a couple of age groups, and that can be the making of certain players at times as well.
What's really worrying is we had a caller in on the Love Sports show who's been to a lot of under-23 games, and he said they're really not very good. So I don't know what we can read into that.
I think it's an interesting point, and I think it's always dangerous if you start trying to judge academy football in terms of good or not. You want to see them playing a good system and being a proper unit. When I used to watch more of the youth football, I used to do some commentary on it back in the Homestyle Radio days, it became really apparent when we played some of the bigger sides who'd had that group together for long periods of time, where playing who knew each other's game inside out, we could be overrun at times because we chop and change so much, and players are, as I say, dropping in and out of different age groups all the time. If you look at the selection, particularly at the moment in the under-23s, there's a lot of trialists being used, a lot of, as I say, players playing up in age groups, and when they haven't played football together, even though it's not 100% competitive, it's still competitive football, and I think that's probably where it's important not to judge too harshly how they're playing right now. But there we go. So I guess, I don't know, Chris, have you got any comments to add on the signing of Scott Banks and what that type of signing means to you?
I don't think it's a bad sign that we're signing young prospects. I think that's a really sensible piece of business. The other thing I will point out mischievously is obviously he's come from Dundee United, and I suspect we're doing a little bit of a favour for our friend Comrade Speroni there by just subtly doing over the rival team to the team that we got him from back in the day, because we've made friends with Dundee, as we know, and through his testimonial and other occasions. So yeah, nice to see us stick one up Dundee United. Don't at me.
You'll do anything to get that banned word in on this show. No using the C word. All right, I'm not going to tell you again. It'll be. Do you remember Nick was on an 18-month suspension for bad jokes? Don't, I've got power. Don't forget that. I'll yeah.
It was a
Sorry, El Presidente.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure if that's worse or not. Anyway, before we talk about the last confirmed incoming that many people might not have actually picked up on, I'll talk about in a sec. I just want to also address what's coming up in the show. We're going to, once we've rounded up the news and the confirmed ins and outs, we'll be going into a bit of detail around the rumours and developments that we've seen, talking about Nathan Ferguson, Jared Bowen, Carrasco, Ibe, Kouame, Eze, Wickham, and probably various others that pop up throughout the course of the show. There'll be a little quiz later on that I've put together, a little transfer quiz. So we'll see who's on at the time we get involved in that and see who gets to win. And then we'll be constantly reviewing the news, and there'll be a time we dedicate to going through comments and questions from listeners as well. Yeah, so hopefully enjoy that. And some point, hopefully around the 9:30 mark in that area, if he's free to do so, depending on developments, the Athletic journalist, and that's a terrible way of saying it because he now writes for the Athletic. I'm sure Don won't want me to describe him as Athletic, but Don Fifield should be joining us for a quick chat, which very much looking forward to. But part of me also hopes that he won't be available because it means he'll be attending to Palace matters, and that would be good news for us. But anyway, we're hoping to speak to Don fairly shortly on what's going on and what's happened. So look forward to that. Nick, you got your hand up again, mate. Yeah, very needy today.
One of our listeners on the Facebook page, Stephen Sheffield, has actually asked what's the latest on Jim Bowen. So from Bullseye, and Neil Koska claims that he'll come on at the end and say, "Let's see what we could have won." I don't know if he's referring to the quiz or actually to all the players we've missed out on the transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, he's sadly no longer with us, Jim Bowen, is he? So not that necessarily rules out a transfer, I guess. But yeah, good stuff, guys. But I don't think there's anything happening on Jim Bowen. But yeah.
But apparently we might get a tankard if we're lucky.
Was it a speedboat quite often as well, wasn't it? When that was the top price, and
or a caravan.
They just got worse over the years. Yeah, caravan. Yeah, I mean it was bizarre, wasn't it? Game shows back then. The kids listening won't remember what it was like, back in those days. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of guys who remember Bullseye fondly / with a degree of frustration and anger. Yeah,
you've got it in one there, Chris.
Yeah, we've got a sort of drum sound effect for terrible jokes. I think Mikey needs to be on the ball with that one. Chris, you've also got your hand up.
Well, based on Roy's transfer window experience so far, I'm guessing that we've moved on from the speedboat to the teas made. If you're not old enough to remember what a teas made is, then have a look, just Google it, and then weep at what we're living right now.
They used to be the height of sophistication, didn't they? The old teas maids. Imagine a machine that makes your tea. Yeah.
Oh, worst tea ever. If you could put 3 tea bags in it, it'd still taste as weak as whatever.
Well, it's kind of reminiscent of a lot of, particularly the older and some of the non-league grounds where you order yourself a cup of tea and you get a polystyrene cup with scaldingly hot water, some awful weak-tasting Tetley tea bag and gone off milk. But I kind of miss those days.
While we are talking about retro drinks, I had the experience at the Newcastle away just before Christmas. I was feeling terribly ill, and genuinely, for once, this wasn't anything to do with drink. And I had Bovril at a football ground for the first time in about a decade, and I've now become addicted to it. So I've bought a mammoth-sized tub of Bovril, and I'm having it pretty much every day at the moment, which is odd. I never thought that would happen to me, but it has.
Mate, I mean, I'll be honest, I love Bovril, but the simple fact of the matter is it's delicious because it's full of so much salt, and it it makes you crave it. I mean, that's the worst thing you could have done, man. Buy a tub of it. We've only got lots of people getting in touch on YouTube and trying to find someone to actually keep up with those YouTube comments at the moment. So bear with us on that, guys. But do keep the comments coming, and we'll try and get to some of those once we work out how to do that. So bear with us on that one. But thank you for all the comments coming in as well. So let's just jump back into the actual football. Another signing that was confirmed, but it's never really been confirmed from Palace's end, but it was confirmed by his club, Welling United, and it's a guy called J. Rich Bagley. So he's been signed for the under-23s as a centre back. He's kind of got French and Australian history. Don't know a huge amount about him other than the fact that he's performed well enough. Only signed for them from Dulwich, I think, at the start of this season. I played a handful of games and had a trial at Charlton a year or so back, but came in and has impressed the guys at the club in the under-23s, and we've signed him. So, in terms of confirmed signings, those are the 3: Cenk Tosun, Scott Banks, and J. Rich Bagley. So now it's time to talk about the confirmed outs, and there's been some reaction to this because these have been confirmed today within the last few hours. And we'll start with the one that's generated perhaps the most amount of comments, and that is the permanent transfer. So and it's not really specified, but it'll either be a free transfer or some kind of nominal fee or sell on or something like that. And that's for the striker James Daly to join Bristol Rovers. A lot of hopes I think people had for Daly because quite versatile, had played sort of left back and left wing back as well as left wing, but mainly a striker. Had his various different spells of being quite prolific at academy level. But 2021, I think he is now. So you get to a point where I guess the club has to take a view on whether or not he's likely to be challenging for a first team place. But before I give my reaction to that, I'll start with you, Chris. There's been quite a lot of negative reaction to that on the social medias, and I'm not quite sure what the expectation is there and what people are basing their belief that Daly should have been given a chance at first team level. Obviously, not every player is going to make it, but how do you feel about it? Do you share that sort of frustration, or do you think it's fairly explainable, that one?
Well, that's the process, isn't it? You give players a chance to. I mean, that said, the moment I've immediately said that, I've just thought, how many chances has he actually had outside of the under-23s? And the answer is basically none, isn't it? So I can understand the frustration if you don't go to under-23s games and, which I don't, and haven't seen how he's doing, because in principle, obviously, you want a local lad to do well, you want, youth prospects to come through, and yet we haven't seen this guy. The people who are making that assessment are professionals, and you have to trust them to make that judgment. And they decided that Aaron Wan-Bissaka was ready when a right back was injured. We've had injured strikers for a very long time. If James Daly was ready to play in the Palace first team in the Premier League, then I dare say he'd have got a run out by now at some point, surely. So obviously it's always a shame, but I'm not really that gutted, to be honest. I just wish him well for the move elsewhere, and I hope it works out for him.
No, absolutely right. I think the problem is it feeds slightly into the narrative on Roy Hodgson. I'm going to cough. Excuse me. Just going to bear me one sec. Oh, just like the pros. Oh, right.
Bovril,
So
that
it
is.
just it is the Bovril, yeah. No, like, as I say, it feeds into the narrative of Roy not really trusting fringe players, but particularly not playing youth players if he's, unless he's absolutely forced to. But it's a good observation you make, Chris. There was plenty of opportunity to give him a chance. He made the bench a couple of times, but never used. And as you say, there must be a reason for that. And as much as I'm frustrated by Roy's seeming unwillingness to even try young players unless he has to, I do think in this particular case, it's really to look at it as we've had a chance to develop a player within our academy that's going to move on and have a career, and that's something to be celebrated rather than something to sort of kick the club. There's loads of things we can kick the club about, and we'll be doing plenty of that today. But I think allowing a young player to move on and build a career from himself is probably not one of those. Where do you land on that, Nick? Do you have any kind of frustration or regret that Daly hasn't had a chance, or again, does it make sense to you? Let's wait for Nick to unmute his microphone and answer.
Yeah, sorry. It's I've got so many windows open here because I'm trying to look at Twitter comments and Facebook comments. Yeah, I've never actually seen James Daly play, and I'd heard so many good things about him. And it was definitely a transfer, not a loan, wasn't it? So it's kind of could be the one that got away. We got people on Twitter calling for Sorloth to come back. There were that short of forward players now, especially given that Wickham's rumoured to be having chats with Sheffield Wednesday because he likes Barry Bannon so much. So I'll be honest, I can't comment on how much we'd miss him if I haven't seen him.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. I think one of the other regrets, especially from our friends over at 5 Year Plan, will be that if James Daly's still not around and Rob Street's not breaking to the side, they can't have Street and Daly playing for Palace in the first team. So they'll be very upset about that. But I guess that's probably not a reason to keep James Daly at the club, I guess. But there we go. Right, so James Daly has left. I talked about that, and we've also mentioned already that Scott Banks has joined Alloa Athletic. I said that too quickly. Who it's the Scottish second tier on loan. Again, obviously, just about getting game time now at a competitive level. We've also seen Dion Curtis-Henry, who's a 22-year-old goalkeeper, been back up for a while. Ex-Peterborough, obviously not been troubling the bench or the first team anytime soon, and has gone on to Hampton and Richmond Borough, who play in the National League South. So obviously, best of luck to Dion Curtis-Henry there, and see how he gets on. But again, not a player you expect will be troubling the first team at any point, and that probably be the level he moves to. And also Giovanni McGregor, who's an interesting player, a very sort of talented central midfielder, can do a bit of everything. Got a decent tackle on him, good pass with the ball, good energy, but maybe one of those who doesn't stand out in any of those disciplines. But another player who's made the bench on a relatively regular basis over the last, few injury-plagued matches. But I'm quite surprised that he had to drop to the National League South as well to go and play for Dartford. I'm not sure if either of you guys have seen him play much. I've seen a couple of games myself live and one or two streaming on the Palace app as well. I think he's, I thought he was a promising player, but I'll be honest, I thought he was a couple of years younger than he is. I think he said he's 21 now. So again, possibly one that won't get a chance at a Premier League level, which, you understand. It's a very difficult thing to do. But those are the confirmed outs. So James Daly out on permanent to Bristol Rovers. Scott Banks back to Scotland on loan for the rest of the season. to Alloa in the Scottish Championship, Dion Curtis-Henry to Hampton and Richmond Borough in National League South, and also in the National League South at Dartford, Giovanni McGregor, all till the end of the season. So there we go. That's your roundup so far, unless anything's happened in the meantime of us having that conversation. And hopefully someone will jump in if that is the case. Chris, you want something?
I've got my hand up, but it's not because something exciting's happened. I'm just making the slightly nerdish comment that it's a bit like the early stages of general election count night when they start doing all the kind of really obvious safe seats, and Labour ends up 97-0 up and then ends up losing 597. So, that's kind of where we are, really. Obvious transfers at the moment. Maybe something will happen later, but who knows?
On a non-transfer related thing, you saying those big numbers, I did see a brilliant tweet yesterday that did football scores regarding pop groups. So it was Heaven 17, Blink 182, which made me laugh.
Very good, Nick.
Oh,
But yeah.
Now, I'm hoping he's going to help me out here because we're waiting on DR Kerner to join us, and I believe DR's left us a little message to let us know how he's going on, and I believe we've got that lined up as a clip if I'm very, very lucky. What you got, Mikey?
I am on my way. You don't understand how long it's been. I'm very, very, very sorry. I am on my way. The problem is, I've got a fucking black box, and then there's people in front of me that's managing to go flipping slower than the speed limit. So it's taking fucking longer. But I am on my way. I am sorry once again. I am coming.
He manages to say flipping once and then let us off 2 F-bombs at the same time. But there's a very angry young DR Kerners for you there. But he's on his way, I believe.
Has he got both his shoes? That's the thing, because that's one of the things that one of our early chats. He's moved from not having all his shoes to being in a black box behind traffic, not going fast enough. I mean, he's come a long way since he joined us.
He really has. He's from leaving us a voicemail as a 14-year-old complaining he'd had to run away from Millwall fans and lost a shoe to what you just heard there, which, I mean, there's no real excuse for that, is there? We'll catch up with him a little more when he joins us a little bit later on. So, okay, let's get into the rumours and the developments. And I think we'll probably start here. We've had a few WhatsApp messages in, and I've labelled this one as WhatsApp 1. So hopefully that's really helpful. But let's hear from a currently unnamed listener. Maybe he says his name at the end. I'm not sure.
Good evening, back at the nest. How are we? It's Darren. On this deadline day debacle, just thought I'd check in and, give a point of view on how I think this window's gone. We've got Czech Tossen in, who's injured. We've got Scotty Banks in, who's gone back out on loan, which is understandable. And then, as of 7:35, we've got absolutely sweet FA. Everything that looks as though it was going to be has broken down and fallen apart. Pretty much like Ferguson's medical. And, well, it's slightly disappointing to say the least. If it was a test at school, we'd have failed it miserably. We'd be sat at the back of the classroom with the dunce's hat on, facing the wall. Like usual, I can't understand why it's the same every single time. It's so disappointing. It's just one excuse after another. Oh, it's tough to do deals here. It's tough to do deals there. We get it. We understand it's hard and things fall apart. But come on, there must have been something in place from the summer. There must have been something in place, from when our squad started dropping like flies with injuries. I mean, must do better is an understatement. Something's got to give here. Roy's obviously not happy. He feels he's not being backed by the board. I just don't know where else to start. Really, it's it's an absolute debacle. And as much as we can sit and point fingers at teams like West Ham, who are really, it looks like they're a sinking ship, they're still attracting players. So, where are we going wrong? Where do we need to start pulling our trousers up and stop people parking their bikes? It's getting beyond a joke now. What do you boys think?
Well, different clip to, to the one I was thinking of. That one, Darren, and thanks first of all, thanks for your message, Darren, much appreciated. And Darren left that via our WhatsApp voicemail number. There is 020575 1266. That's 0203 575 1266 if you want to leave us a voice message. But there's a lot in there, and Darren's taken us into the deals that we're going to talk about that have been widely reported, and there's obviously a fair degree of fact out there that's being reported now. Not everything that we're talking about can be 100% verified, but there's certainly a lot of facts out there now that we're dealing with. And if we start on that with perhaps the most likely deal, but less likely than it was 24 hours ago, and that is the signing of Nathan Ferguson from West Bromwich Albion. Young right back, who can also play left and also in the centre. Very, very highly rated player until he wouldn't sign a new contract, and then West Brom decided that he wasn't. But very, very talented young footballer, one we've been looking at for quite some time. A player I believe Roy was aware of when he was a very young player coming through at West Brom. So one that we're definitely keen to do. But it seems that as part of his medical, a knee injury was detected. Now, again, without being there, you don't know what type of a knee injury that is, whether it's something that's a potential career-shortening injury. But whatever it is, it seems to have led to Palace looking to review the terms of the deal that was potentially agreed, possibly looking to change the amount of money that's guaranteed and probably move some of it to appearance-based payments, you would suggest. But I suppose the question, Nick, if I can start with you, is should Palace really be messing about at this stage? We don't know the extent of the injury, but the guy's been playing fairly regular football. Wouldn't expect it to be that bad. Is this the sort of thing where we really should get this deal done, or are we speaking too much as fans on that basis?
It's hard to tell because we don't know the extent of the injury. Is it just stuff from the injury he got in December, sort of the remnants of that? Or is he going to be a crock and actually be worse than Wickham? Because we don't want to be spending money and then it'll be bad money if he's never fit enough to play. But that said, if he's playing so often for the Baggies, then it can't be that bad, surely. And there was another player we were after. I can't remember who it was. I saw it earlier on. I was actually in Lidl looking at Twitter, and it was a player that we didn't go for that was injured. That's just been bought by another club who didn't seem to be too bothered that the player was injured. So who knows? Maybe they're just being ultra cautious because money's that tight.
I think probably the words you say at the end there, money's that tight. I think that probably does look the case. I think we all have to be careful with the money that we spend, and I dare say when we're thinking about spending money, we perhaps look at things like the signing of Mamadou Sakho on a big contract for a big sum of money and how little he's played. I guess that probably plays into the level of risk that people are really willing to take. Chris?
And maybe those are the lessons that have been learned from previous signings. You've mentioned Sakho. I would also point to Wickham, albeit that we didn't spend a huge amount of money on him, but his appearances have been, to be polite, sporadic for the club. He was on good form before he got injured, at the Swansea game a number of years ago, and I saw that, and it was a horrible injury, and I really do wish him well. But he needs some game time, and it probably isn't going to be with us, which is a massive shame. But the point being, let's go back to Ferguson. I don't think unless I'm misunderstanding things, I don't think we're talking about a massive, massive fee. Yeah, he's a young kid. I would hope that he'd be pushing Joel for his place at right back, and he's clearly played a lot of football at Championship level. You actually play more games at that level, and it's a far more physical game, I would say, down there from memory of having watched a lot of that football for a number of years before we came up. So I'd be willing to take the gamble, but then of course it's not my money, is it? So yeah, fingers crossed.
No, exactly right, and it's none of our money, but it is our club really. Although we don't own it, I think the supporters are really what drives a club, and what the owners have a responsibility too. But we'll talk more about this. But this is this in terms of the signings going wrong and what have you. This is seemingly fairly minor and fairly understandable to a degree. If there genuinely is an injury problem and it's people trying to make the best of things. But I think let's move on to the next signing. And just as a heads up, Don Pfeiffer will be joining us hopefully within the next 5 minutes. So we get the sort of latest from that's doing the rounds in media, and and all the different channels that they have access to. So hopefully some nice updates there. I'm not holding my breath, as you can probably tell from my tone as I'm explaining it. I'm not expecting too much in the way of news, but we'll get the very latest from Don Pfeiffer, who's got his ear to the ground. Probably hearing very little back, I'd have to say, at the moment. Anyway, so let's talk about Jarrod Bowen in the lead up to Dom joining us. And that is a player that everyone got very, very excited yesterday when it was announced that we were very much, in the process of trying to make that signing. Apparently a £16 million fee agreed. A player who, it's been fairly highly rumoured that was up there on Roy's list of players he'd like to sign, doing fantastically well in the Championship. And one of those things where if you're going to buy in the Championship, buying players who are playing at the sort of top of their level back down there, that's the way to go. Young, scoring goals, full of confidence. It seemed too good to be true, and perhaps it was too good to be true, because straight away there was a suggestion that the player would prefer a move to Newcastle. Had also been rumoured, but then up popped the name of West Ham. And I've got some. It's very difficult to go too far into this because you end up in conspiracy theory territory. But I know that Palace and West Ham often use the same agency for some of their discussions and deals, and you do have to wonder, as soon as you see something like this happen, that it suddenly breaks all over the media that we've agreed a fee. Clearly, there's a motivation behind doing that, and all of a sudden, it looks like West Ham have signed him, or it's not done yet. So who knows exactly what will happen? But seemingly agreed, seemingly gone through a medical and agreed a higher fee than Palace had offered. So, my worry there is immediately is if someone acting knows Palace's deals and their restrictions and what they're trying to do, and just so happens to be acting for West Ham as well, it'd be quite easy for that situation to be manipulated. And that's just me speculating. I'm not alleging anything at all, but you always worry that perhaps the club's been used as a bit of a stalking horse there to get a deal up and running, and we really can't afford to be used as a stalking horse right now.
Is the difference that we offered it on a loan deal with an option to buy in the summer, where potentially they could have got more money out of it, rather than actually putting in a straight bid, which is what the team that are going to be relegated this year hopefully have done, because I noticed that he wants a buyout clause if West Ham do get relegated, if he does indeed sign for them.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say because obviously the rumours, without being in the negotiating table ourselves, we don't know exactly what's true. But my understanding is that there was a fee agreed. It might be that we have been trying to do quite a lot of loan deals. Let's face it, almost try before you buy kind of situation. But I'm not really 100% certain what that deal was. I suspect it's nothing to do with it being a loan, but I can't guarantee you that that's the case. But it's a good question. If we are trying to sort of mess about a little bit and change the course of deals, it suggests to me that it's lessons not learned from previous windows, because we've that's cost us before, and it'd be very, very frustrating if that's the case again. All sorts of things are going on with my my presenter list, and people changing their names and not really telling me who they are. So I've now got someone on our call called Oops too. Who's that?
It's Chris, just back.
You'll probably call yourself Chris then, mate. So I know who's on. We're expecting.
Yeah, I know. Well, I went with Oops for the first time because all I did was I was Googling in the background to try and find out extra information. And and annoyingly, it turned out to be the window that we were actually connected on. So I just completely disconnected from the show. And then to kind of underscore the professionalism, having reconnected as Oops, it then said health check failed. So I had to reconnect as Oops too. Welcome back, me.
Too much of an explanation there, but I know who you are now. That was the main thing I was looking for. You didn't miss the end of that fascinating chat there as well. But top work, Chris. Glad to have you on board, mate. Well done.
As long as you can keep the transfer window open and not shut that early, yeah.
Yeah, definitely don't click the X in the top right of the transfer window before we at least try and do something. That would be very, very difficult.
I think we've already done that.
So, do you want some social media comment, Chris?
Yeah, why the hell not?
Okay, so Kieran Boyle on Facebook is moaning that we're the lowest scorers in the league. What are we going to do about that? Neil Koska's saying Niase's been mentioned. A few people mentioning Ibe. A certain James Howard, who some of you might know from the Love Sport shows, he said we don't need to panic buy and not buy players carrying injuries. I think he's referring to Ferguson. We're in a comfortable position and improving from last season. We can't have pragmatism on this programme, can we? That's not allowed, is it? We want panic. Pragmatism is bad. Anyway, so that's a few people watching on the Facebook. And Paul Nash on Twitter has said, honestly, he wouldn't blame Roy if he walked. This transfer window has been pathetic.
Well, we'll pick those comments up in just a sec, but we've been joined by two people with the first name beginning with D. One of them's DR, but we'll wait to speak to him. But most importantly, been joined by Dom Fifield. Hi, Dom. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Amazing. I mean, we've had some technological problems, but this bit worked, which is most important. Good to speak to you, mate. But it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. The roles are missing us.
Yeah,
definitely.
Those of you who don't know, Dom and I share a love for mutton rolls. I've explained them many, many times on this show.
You introduced them to me. I didn't know anything about them before, to be fair. I blame Nav.
Yeah, it is Nav's fault. It's fair to say I changed your life with the introduction of those mutton rolls, right?
I'm not denying it.
Good stuff. I'm not going to say whether it's in a good way or not, because that'd be giving too much away. So it's been a great deadline day for Palace so far, but I guess the simple question would be, is anything happening?
Yes. They're still there. They're still in the offices at Soho, hoping to negotiate this deal for Nathan Ferguson. Look, I know this is probably underwhelming, really, considering what everybody envisaged might happen in this window. But I think if they secure Ferguson, despite the fact that he has clearly got a problem with his knee, and they feel as if they can get him back to full fitness at some point, that may involve surgery. We'll have to see. But at some point in the future, then they are still getting one of the best young fullbacks in the Championship and a player of huge potential, and so therefore they are thinking long term. That is part of this policy of regeneration, rejuvenation. However, it's probably will, even if it does get completed before the deadline this evening, it will probably still feel like an underwhelming window for most people.
Yeah, absolutely right. And obviously, there was a lot of excitement when it was announced that we'd agreed a fee, and now a lot of trepidation that the deal's still going on. But I guess understandable in the circumstances. There's a lot of excitement around various other players as well, and I guess it looks like, well, obviously Bowen looks like going to West Ham. Carrasco went to Atletico. Some rumours of Jordan Ibe and things like that. Is there anything else going on anywhere else that you're aware of?
I'd be very surprised if there are any other incomings tonight. I'd be very, very surprised. I mean, all those players you've mentioned, I know Roy was fairly adamant yesterday about Carrasco, but the reality was that Palace were talking with him over the course of, quite a few weeks, and it didn't come to anything ultimately. People can draw their own conclusions as to why that didn't happen, but the player has joined Atletico Madrid today on loan from Dalian Yifang. With Jared Bowen, my understanding was that Palace spoke with Hull earlier in the week and actually had a deal agreed in principle with Hull at that point. Now, it seems as if, let me actually qualify that they agreed a deal with Hull, but they never got the impression from the player that he wanted to come. He never, ever gave them the impression that he wanted to come to Selhurst Park. Okay, so subsequently West Ham have come in for him, and they've offered a very different type of deal, by the sound of things, to Hull City. Even then, we're told that his preference was actually to go to Newcastle United, but Newcastle never came anywhere close to even offering a deal to Hull. I think they probably got blown out of the water by what West Ham were proposing, and as we speak now, I suspect that deal will go through before the deadline passes tonight. He's at the London Stadium talking to David Moyes. He and his family are there at the moment. So, but the reality of that one is he didn't want to come to Crystal Palace. So we can gnash our teeth and be frustrated and angry that Palace haven't shown any ambition to sign a player, one of the best players in the Championship. But the reality was he didn't want to come to Crystal Palace, so we weren't going to convince him. There were other suitors that were more appealing to him. That is frustrating, but it's a reality of life, unfortunately. Yeah,
and that's probably it's a good point to make in terms of the reality of the situation. And I suppose on that, I have to ask is, the way that Palace fans responding to transfer dealings, I guess it's probably no different to the way that frustrations come out from fans of other clubs. But from your perception, is there, is it quite the kind of the hopeless situation in terms of dealing with transfer windows at Palace that it appears to be from the outside? It seems the last few windows, it can't really be called anything other than a failure. What is it that Palace are doing wrong?
Well, look, it's a good question, and I suspect, I'd hope that the people within the hierarchy and within the management staff would sit down and assess their own performances tomorrow, the weekend, and work out where it went so wrong. Because the reality was, and again, he sort of backtracked on it yesterday, but Roy Hodgson was on record, admittedly at the height of the injury crisis, but saying he would like 4 or 5 players in this month. And yesterday he admitted that was very optimistic, and it is optimistic in fairness, particularly if the club is attempting to rejuvenate and to bring in younger players, and also simultaneously raise the standard of the player within the squad. That's not an easy thing to do, and I'd say it's fiendishly difficult to do in January. It's the type of thing you want to be doing in the summer. Now, they didn't last summer. Last summer, I think it's probably more of a failure in terms of that policy than January, because I just think the reality of how things work in January, it's more of a lottery, and the people that you might want to bring in, generally speaking, aren't available come January. So that if there is a policy, in place now, you can ask your questions as to why that wasn't in place come the back end of May last season, and why the sufficient progress wasn't made over the summer to bring in the type of player that would plan for the longer term at Crystal Palace. They've got to do that again in the summer as well, coming up. But they've been unlucky on some deals. I mean, they've clearly been unlucky on Nathan Ferguson. The kid plays 90 minutes on Tuesday night against Cardiff City, and then his medical shows up a serious knee issue the following day, and it seems unlikely that, having played 95 minutes, that he picked up that injury on Tuesday night. I guess that's something that only the medical department would be able to determine, and the player would know. But we'll find out what happens with that. But they've also been lucky with things like Christian Kouame, who they'd lined up prior to January. They were really hopeful of bringing him in from Genoa. They had a deal agreed in principle again, and then he goes off with the Ivory Coast in November and does his cruciate knee ligament. Now, he's a player that actually did move today. Weirdly, he went to Fiorentina, but he's not going to be able to play again until next summer. And the deal that Fiorentina struck with Genoa was a lot less. Well, it was less than what Palace were going to pay, but that reflects the fact that he's not going to be available for 6 or 7 months, and there's an element of risk in taking him on. So there are two players there that have picked up potentially serious knee injuries, and Palace have been frustrated in getting them in. You know, it's the reality of how football works. That it just seems that, you know, when you're trying to rejuvenate and take on this difficult project, you don't need things like that going against you.
No, definitely not. And my last question for you before I let you go and sit there in hope of something happening is it really. So a mutual friend of ours sort of raised this point, and I won't mention his name. And he basically said, obviously, it was clear, you know, that Palace did something to release the funds from the Wan-Bissaka deal, and you would suggest that showed intent on at least spending some money in this window, freeing up some funds. Is that evidence that Palace had a plan and really tried to implement it, or, you know, is there a potential question as to, you know, where on earth has that money gone?
I think they did try and implement it. The fee was 18 million euros for Kouame, the deal with the Australian bank was struck before that price was met with Genoa. I mean, the deal that was struck with Nathan Ferguson on Wednesday for Nathan Ferguson on Wednesday was rising potentially to £11 million. And, you know, we don't want to get carried away. These fees aren't necessarily all paid up front. They can be amortised over the course of a contract. So, I mean, £22.5 million, which I think was the figure that was mooted for the bank, you know, potentially might have brought you 3 or 4 players in. Well, Kouame would have been one of them. Ferguson would have been one of them. There's a loan fee presumably for Cenk Tosun as well. It doesn't look great, I know, but they're the targets that they lined up for one reason or another haven't come off. And I would like to think as well that they've actually, in the background, have earmarked some players that maybe aren't available now, but will be available potentially come the summer. And I know they've spoken to one club in France about a player that they're hopeful of getting in the summer. But the reality is, we can't keep saying that. We actually need players to get over that line. And I think with each transfer window that comes along now, we're going to have to just be slightly warier with our expectations as to what is going to be realised come the end of it, because, well, judging by the sort of Twitter outrage out there today, if there is a sort of snapshot of the mood of supporters, and I don't suppose it will be quite as toxic tomorrow against Sheffield United as Twitter suggests, but there is definitely grumbling discontent out there, and it wouldn't take a lot to ignite it all.
Absolutely right, Dom. Well, not sounding too positive, but really appreciate your updates, mate, and always good to speak to you. And yeah, we'll let you crack on, and yeah, hopefully speak to you again soon, mate.
All the best. Cheers, guys.
Take care. Cheers, Dom. Well, there we go. Update from Dom Feifel. Perhaps not as inspiring as we were hoping for, but pretty much what I expected, and some very interesting insight in there. We're going to have to do a quick live check to see if we can actually hear Mr. DR Kernaz. Let's see what happens if he unmutes that microphone. Hello, DR. Are you there?
I am here.
Oh my God, it's so nice to hear your little voice.
Oh, I'm such a failure. I came after Dom though. People are going to be like, what's going on?
We played your voice clip out earlier as well, just so people could understand what was going on in your life at the time. You swore twice, but also in the middle you said flipping instead of the other F word. So very inconsistent, DR. But good
Just
to
like
have you
Palace.
on, mate. And well, exactly.
So
get your thoughts on the window at the moment, but it seems that Chris is desperate to talk to you.
All I wanted to ask, DR, is quick shoe count. How many?
Oh, I've got all my shoes. Don't worry about that. I've
Both?
got all my shoes. Yeah. I haven't lost my shoes on this window. There's no
Still
activity
fine.
to run away from. It's all
No,
quiet.
exactly right. So we've obviously there's been zero news, and we've just got the sort of latest update from Dom. So the only player it looks like we might be adding, and that's still far from certain, would be Nathan Ferguson. How would you view that window, DR, if that was the case? Any kind of degree of appreciation or a disaster?
I think you know how I feel. I feel like it's a joke. Even if you get Nathan Ferguson at this point of the season, we needed a right back in the summer, and we've managed to go into this window, and now we're an hour away from the deadline. And yes, it's inconvenient. The fact that Nathan Ferguson made the call didn't go through, but why are we leaving it so late? I mean, it is not rocket science. We've needed a right back as soon as we sold Wan-Bissaka. We didn't sell Wan-Bissaka in the summer and deadline day. We sold him very early on. We sold him, I think, middle of the summer, basically. And yet we didn't go and get a right back. And now we're at this point, an hour away. And it's not only a right back. Ideally, we need other positions as well. But we hour away and we still haven't got the right back confirmed. I feel like it's an absolute shambles, and feel like there's people at the club, and not particularly Steve Parish, but there's people at the club that's taking a mickey out of Roy. I've criticized Roy a lot, but as the owners, the fact that we haven't really looked at the relegation zone so far this season and they still haven't backed him, it must be absolutely embarrassing, and it must be embarrassing for Roy. And I know some people have been saying that they wouldn't be surprised if Roy leaves, and I'm in that camp as well. I wouldn't be surprised. There were talks, of course, in December, and yet again, he hasn't signed an extension, and I don't blame him one bit. It's been absolute shambles, and it's been embarrassing.
So it's interesting. You you suggest some sympathy with Roy there. There does seem to be a little bit of a split, because depending on what you know / believe / read, there's some degree of frustration with Roy in terms of his attitude and slight disconnect with the club in terms of the transfers that are being looked at. And I think as with anything, and I think I said this on the transfer pod yesterday, I think as with anything, the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think there's been a difficulty and an degree of ineptitude in backing Roy in the transfer window. But I often also think that what he wants and what the club are trying to do, what their policy is, as Dom talked about, in terms of getting younger players in, more talented players, potentially playing in lower divisions and overseas, and just trying to bring that age down and potentially that quality and hunger up, doesn't necessarily fit in with what Roy wants to do with the team. And that's why, personally, I fall more on the side of we probably need a change in approach than I do on Roy's suffering only because he's not being backed.
Look, if Roy does leave the club, which is, I think there is a massive possibility of that happening, and we still have the American owners at the club, and this is what we have to go through the next couple of windows, then I'll be extremely worried. At the end of the day, Roy will keep us up, and that's the most important thing right now. Him keeping us up until the American owners are out, and then once they're out, get a new manager in with new owners and start fresh again. If Roy leaves now, and let's say I don't know who would we bring in, because we've got the Pulis, we've got the Allardyce, we've had Roy. I mean, we'll run out of all the managers basically that tends to keep clubs up. So I don't know who will come in. I can see someone like Houghton coming in, which is scary. Let's say Chris Houghton does come in and we still have the same owners and things don't go as well as right now, and we actually do need backing. Would you be happy or let's say comfortable with Houghton as a manager? I wouldn't. And that's why I'm worried, because I know Roy will keep us up and we need to stay up in the Premier League before we get a new manager in and new owners. And I just feel like right now, yes, the vision is different, of course, from the club. The club are trying to lower the age of the squad. But yet again, Nathan Ferguson, he is one of them players, but I still feel like it shouldn't have been left last minute. There's no excuse. There's an hour left. Legit, an hour left, and we still haven't got right back in.
Well, there we go. I know, Chris, you had your hand up in the middle of that to sort of come in, but we've had the full force of BR Kernas for a good few minutes there. Do you still need to react?
I still want to react, and it kind of links to. I mean, DR went on a bit of a curve there, and we were kind of on the Roy out stroke. I've got some sympathy with him, and I think we've all been on that curve over a long period of this season. But you just need to look at the league table, and as DR just said, he will keep us up. So that bit we can be confident about. Then you need to look at the transfer business side, and he clearly wasn't a happy man in his press conference, and that's something that we're going to need to reflect on. Was it obvious we needed a right back? Yeah. Is this right back the right one? Quite possibly. I mean, he's 11 years younger, so even if he has got a knee injury, I mean, I'd be inclined to say just take the gamble, Palace, and bring him on board. I know, as I said earlier, it's not my money, but I really want the guy to just come on board and give him a chance. Then we've got to talk about if Roy does leave, and I think, frankly, it's quite likely that he will leave at the end of the season. Then we need to look at who's the right person to take us forward. Is that another manager who's got this experience of kind of being at mid to lower level? Probably not. Do we want another crisis manager either? Probably not. So I don't know what the answer is to that, and I think people should comment on that. So if you're listening live, then please tell us on the socials who you'd like to see. Whether that's an emergency appointment, probably not, or in the summer. But in the meantime, we also need to be thinking about how we deal with the situation, because right now, clearly, Roy doesn't feel backed. Are we going to be in a position where lots of Palace fans are atting Steve Parish and stacking him off? Because you've got to ask whether that helps. And frankly, I probably don't think it does. But let's see what others think.
You're taking longer to finish a point than I am. It was impressive, Chris. And you went through various different tangents as well. I think you're
but I'm not drunk this time. That's a good start, right?
I think that might be that's true. That might be the problem. But there's hopefully, Dar, you've retained the point that you were going to answer.
But just quickly, if we're going to get Nathan Ferguson, and we know that there's a problem with his knee, what is taking so long in the first place? I mean, we still want this player, even though there's a issue with his knee. I mean, it seems like the main problem is the fee. I mean, are we in a position to really go and negotiate and try to ask for a lower fee or try change when we're going? Like, we're not really in a position. I mean, it's a January transfer window first and foremost, and we do need a right back. So if, let's say, the medical was all clear and we was going to get a player, we're still going to pay that money. But it seems like now we're playing hardball, and we're not in a position to play hardball. We only have one right back. Martin Kelly is not a right back. So why are we doing this in the first place?
I guess the answer to that is, when we are trying to get the best possible deal and protect our investment to a degree. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, but I think there is a chance tonight that the discussions with West Brom will end up in a position where we think that what we would need to pay to get him isn't worth the risk, versus the sort of the situation that we have of using Joel Ward, hoping he doesn't get injured again, with Martin Kelly as his deputy at right back. And I guess we've picked up 30 points so far with that situation, and I suppose the club might view that it's acceptable to wait till the summer. I don't think there's many fans out there that would agree that ending this transfer window without another signing is a good idea. But again, I suppose the point we've made already is it's not our money, and we might just have to deal with that reality, as Don talked about. So before we get any further into anything, I would like to take a little moment. We're going to take a little sort of journey away from the frustration of the transfer window, try and potentially lighten / I don't know what the alternative is, but try and lighten the mood a little bit. So I've devised a little quiz, gents. So it'll be Nick versus Chris versus DR.
Yeah.
And it's a transfer quiz because it's transfer deadline day, if you didn't know. So I spent literally minutes earlier on compiling a list of questions. Actually, it took me a little while, but you'll probably detect from the detail of each sort of transfer season that we go through that we get fewer and fewer questions per season. That I was, still writing this quiz at 3 minutes to being on air. So let me give you a quick rundown of the rules. Play along at home, and I will say this now. I'm very sorry that we haven't got to a huge amount of comments yet. We have a couple of voice clips lined up. and we'll try and force DR to read YouTube comments at some point. And Nick will pick up some Facebook and stuff and some Twitter stuff, and maybe I'll dive in as well. But let's go quiz first of all. That's a phrase, isn't it? Let's go quiz. So here's your instructions. You will each answer a question in turn, and I've come up with an odd way of deciding who goes first, second, and third. There's a equal number of questions for you, so you must state an answer even if you don't know the answer. And once you have answered, your opponent can steal. And I'm going to ask you to shout the word "steal." And because we're things cut out on this software, I'll have no idea whatsoever who said "steal" first. I'm just going to make it up. But you can steal the answer if your opponent gets it wrong. Each correct answer is worth 1 point, but I'm going to give 2 points for a steal. So, DR, you've got a question already. It doesn't bode well. What's up?
Well, we've got transfer news. Jason Lucillo, he's left the club out on loan to join Doncaster for the rest of the season.
Oh, wow. Well, fantastic. Thanks for that, DR. Some breaking news there. Another young player goes out. Sure to make everybody really, really happy, I'm sure. But there you go.
Woohoo! And I've got a question.
Okay. Oh, you always.
Sorry, I just saw the tweets. That's why I wasn't really following your instructions. What are we doing?
Genuinely, this is what it's like. It's so much work dealing with this guy. Let's run through it again. Sorry, everyone at home who actually was this. So you're going to get a question each. They're transfer-based questions. I know the answers, but you're going to have to tell me what you think the answer is. If you don't know the answer, don't know is not acceptable. You have to state an answer. Because I just want people to say stuff. So you're going to take it in turns to answer. If someone answers it incorrectly, you can shout the word "steal" to steal if you know the answer. I will award 1 point for a correct answer and 2 points if you get the correct answer after stealing from one of your opponents. So I have a plan to see who starts. And this is it. I think it's a fairly unique system. So I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 50. You're going to give me your guess, and the closest to my number goes first, and then, second is the second closest, and third is the furthest away, right? So I'm going to start with you, Nick. What number do you think that I'm thinking of?
42.
Okay. Chris, what number do you think that I'm thinking of?
41.
Steal.
And DR, what number do you think I'm thinking of between 1 and 50?
11.
Okay, so Chris Clark goes first, Nick second, and DR third. The number I was thinking of was 37. There you go.
Is that your
So
age?
not far out, two of you. They are way off. That's what you're like in quizzes. You're absolutely useless generally. So
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say 35, but I just thought let's go 11. Oh well.
So I'm just gonna make a little note for myself. It goes Chris, Nick, DR. All right. Okay. So Chris, you're first up with the first question. As I say, play along at home. Award yourself your points and then get in touch and let us know how many questions you got right. And you won't win anything because we never get around to sending our prizes out, but you'll win my respect and possibly the respect of at least one other presenter. So question 1, Chris Clark. Who was Palace's most expensive signing in the summer window after promotion, which is the 2013-14 season?
Jose Campagna.
Okay. Incorrect. Anyone want to steal?
Steal.
Nick.
Adebayor.
What?
That's insane. Dear, I'm going to give you a chance to steal. The only person who hasn't given an answer.
Wait. I don't even know. Wait. So right after we got promoted, yeah.
Yeah, the promotion season, so the summer window afterwards, as we built our team for the Premier League. Most expensive signing.
Who did we? Joe Ledley.
Okay, I mean he was signed in that window.
That was January, wasn't it?
It was Dwight Gale.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh. 0 points to everybody so far. Nick, your question up next. Which player signed from Reading in the 13-14 transfer window is still playing in the Premier League this season?
Which player signed from Reading?
I have to rush you because I don't want time for people to look things up. Hurry up.
No, I haven't got a clue. Can't remember.
Still.
Okay, Chris.
Jimmy Kebe.
He's playing poker. He's not playing in the Premier League. DR, you've got a chance to steal because of two wrong answers.
I was going to say Kebe as well. Reading. Who?
I was going to say Kebe, and I thought it was too ridiculous. I'd rather
Yeah.
pass. But it's closer than Adebayor. I'll give him that.
Reading.
All right. Do I have to
Jack?
rush you?
No, not Jack. You didn't.
Jack.
I'm not now. I don't know.
All
Jack.
right.
Yeah.
The answer was Adrian Mariappa. Still no score from anybody.
Yeah.
Dr. Kernas. This is. I'll be honest. You've ended up with a tough question here. You might get one of them, but we'll see. Which two goalkeepers did Palace sign in that transfer window 13-14?
Oh, jeez. Wayne? Hennessy?
Okay. And
Two. Oh. Damn. I don't know the other one.
Still, Nick.
Okay, just before you steal, it is you to steal next, Nick. But before you do,
right.
I'm going to award DR half a point for Wayne Hennessy, and so on that basis that half a point is left, and I'm doubling it for a steal. 1 point is available for the steal.
You might only give me half a point because I can only think of his son McCartney, who's the Southampton goalie.
No, because first of all, that wasn't his name. And
Wrong player. It was McCarthy.
So Chris, have you got any ideas?
No.
All right, it was Neil Alexander. Remember Neil Alexander?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh,
I thought you joined us before.
No, there you go. So I would like to congratulate DR on leading now with half a point.
Half
zero
nil.
for Chris and 0 for Nick. So question number 4, which goes to Chris. How many games did Florian Morange play for Crystal Palace?
2.
It's available for a steal.
Still 0.
Still available for a steal, Nick.
What? You
I'm going to
played?
go 1.
Oh.
And you are correct for 2 points.
Oh.
I saw it as well. It was not a good game. Bristol City, that's all I've got to say on that.
It's the only word that rhymes with orange, isn't it? Morange.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I believe that's possibly why we signed him.
That's why I remember it.
There you go. And obviously, Nick, it's your question next. We've got lots of these questions. I'm concerned about how long this quiz is going to take. I thought I didn't have enough. So question 5. Which ex-Liverpool player joined Palace on loan in the January transfer window that same season?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Which ex-Liverpool player joined Palace on loan in the January transfer window that same season?
Joined us on loan that season. Oh. No, all I can think of is Paul Stewart, but I'm going way, way back.
Yeah, you're probably about 20 years out there. So
Yeah.
that is incorrect. Anyone want to steal?
What season?
So it's the 13-14 season, that same promotion season. It's the January window of our first season back
Tom
in the
Ince.
Premier League. DR has got it for the steal. He didn't say
Yes.
steal, but
Well done.
I'm a nice guy. It was Tom Ince. Well done. So
Yep.
DR currently winning with 2.5 points, Nick with 2 points, and Chris currently a big fat 0 points.
You lot are terrible. How am I winning?
Possibly won't last. So here's your question. Question number 6. DR Kernas. Which international footballer who joined in the January transfer window, combined 2 words there, from outside of the English league, scored on his debut for Palace? So same season, January transfer window, international footballer, not from the English league, scored on his debut for Palace.
Is it my go?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, what was the question? No, I heard the news. That's
I'm
why.
honestly going to start docking you points soon.
No.
So I'm going to say it one more time. Which international footballer who joined Palace in the January transfer window in that same season we're talking about?
Okay.
He joined from outside of the English leagues and he scored on his debut for Palace.
Oh, okay. There was 2 players. Joe Ledley
That's correct.
and Scott
Incredibly,
Dan.
DR.
And Scott Dan.
It wasn't.
Oh.
It was actually Joe Ledley and Tom Ince, if you remember right.
Oh, yeah. It was on a White House set. I remember that goal, yeah.
Yeah. There you go,
Okay.
mate. Well, incredibly, DR Kern has 3.5 points. Nick has 2. Chris 0. Chris, a chance to correct that with a question coming right up. Question number 7. In the 14-15 transfer window, I'm not saying which, James MacArthur was our most expensive signing at over £7 million. Who was our second most expensive signing that season, costing over £5 million?
Jordan Much.
Absolutely bang on. There you go. Chris is on the board with points. Excellent work. So that means Chris has got 1 point, Nick 2, DR 3.5, and Nick's question up next. In the same season, 14-15, Palace signed a French striker. What was his name?
Oh, no, completely going.
Still.
I'm gonna. Nick said so he's still talking, so I might allow him to say something. But
So
if he remembers it.
French striker. No, it's gone.
Okay,
Steele.
Chris, you said Steele first. Who is it?
Yaya Sanogo.
That is the correct answer for 2 additional points. Closing in on Kernaz now. Chris with 3, Nick with 2, DR 3.5. But it's DR's question first. Next, even. On a similar vein, which Nigerian striker signed for Palace in the January transfer window of 2014-15?
Adebayo's not Nigerian. Who's Nigerian? Oh, Nigerian striker signed for us.
Yeah.
Did he play a lot?
No.
14-15 in January.
Yeah, it was a January window signing. One of our kind of late out of left field kind of signings, but that was more than enough.
That is, I can't remember. I don't. Who's typing? I can hear that in the background.
If anyone's googling, you're in trouble. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I could just hear that. Like, at least mute yourself if you're typing.
I'm gonna get Mikey to check the records back and see if we can identify where that came from.
Yeah,
dear Nick. If not guilty, Nick's got cheating history as well in various things. Changing scores in a prediction league. Yeah, we know about you, Nick. Is anyone going to steal? DR's not got it.
Still. And I'm just going to say Emmanuel Adebayo.
No, he's not.
He's not from Nigeria.
Is he not? I don't know. I don't know where he's from.
I forgot.
Someone with your moral compass, mate. That is an upsetting answer. Have you got any ideas from Google?
No. Sanogo, I was going to say, but he's not from.
You've already done that.
No, and he was the previous answer in your question. The answer, everybody, was Shola Amiobi.
Of course. And can we confirm where Emmanuel Adebayo is from?
Togo.
Apart from Newcastle or something.
Togo.
Togo. Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Get through this. I'm enjoying your.
It's going really well, isn't it?
Are we going through all the seasons? Every season?
No, we're not doing all the seasons because I didn't want to bring it too far up to date because then it becomes really easy. Anyway, let's not talk about the quiz during the quiz. Let's just do the quiz, right? Question number 10, and I believe that sits back with you, Chris Clark.
Correct.
Which midfielder did Palace loan to FC Nuremberg in the 14-15 season?
I'm supposed to give an answer.
Should I come in?
Just say still, and then you can. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's Jose Campagna.
You're absolutely right, DR Kernaz.
What? Well done.
2 points.
Well done,
mate. So that takes the scores to DR with 5.5 points, Chris in second place with 3 points, and Nick languishing at the bottom with 2 points, like a hambling at the bottom of a fantasy football league. Reminded myself of my traumatic fantasy football league season this year. Anyway, now question number 11. This sits with you, Nick. I think this is low-hanging fruit, I reckon. Which goalkeeper did Palace bring in from QPR in the summer window of 15-16?
15-16. That's a long time ago. 15-16.
Yeah, possibly not. I'm not using that. That's the 2015.
Oh, 2015, 2016. Yeah. The goalie from QPR was. I don't know why I've got Scott Flinders in my head.
I'm going to say Steele just in case.
Okay, well, you're fumbling. It's not Flinders. Chris.
Steele. Alex McCarthy.
Absolutely right. Already talked about him, but I was worried that you might not get it, Nick, because you called him McCartney. It was indeed Alex McCarthy for 2 points. Chris stealing up to 5. Nick remains on 2. And DR still on 5.5 points. That half point might be crucial. Getting tense now, isn't it? Question number 12 for you, DR Kernaz. Which former club captain, so that's a former club captain, was loaned to Preston North End in that same 2015-16 season?
Jeez. Is it 15, 16 was McCarthy's no.
Still,
Yeah, go on.
is that allowed?
I'll
Hambo?
allow it, yeah.
Paddy McCarthy.
It was indeed Paddy
But
McCarthy.
didn't I just say McCarthy?
You mumbled it. You didn't actually, then you said no, so I couldn't take that as an answer.
Because you didn't say yes. So
Well, how am I supposed to know whether you meant Paddy or Alex? You just said McCarthy.
yeah, I thought you would. Oh, I should have said Paddy. Oh.
Yeah, you should, yeah. I mean, controversial, but not that I particularly care. Chris now up to 7 points, Nick on 2, DR 5.5, and Chris, it is your question next. Palace allowed which centre-back to leave to play for Kerala Blasters in that 15-16 season?
Peter Ramage.
It was indeed Peter Ramage. He's storming ahead now. 8 points for Chris Clark. Well, Nick, some pride needs restoring here, mate.
Yeah.
You ready? Question 14 is yours. Palace broke their transfer record in the 15-16 season, signing which player?
In the interest of the quiz, I'm going to let one of the others steal it.
Oh my days! Come on, Nick. You can do it. Believe in yourself.
No, I'm not. I refuse.
All right
to
then.
answer.
All right. 15, 16.
Mm-hmm. We broke our transfer record. We're
Christian.
doing that every season. Do you say Christian?
Yeah, Ben. Well, he's not going to be
Well,
Christian.
you're using one name, but okay, fair enough. You're incorrect. Chris Clark, do you know it?
Mamadou Sakho.
Incorrect.
15, 16. He just joined
Yeah.
2 years, like last year.
The actual answer was, of course, Johan Kabay. Be kicking yourselves.
Of course.
Be kicking yourselves.
Oh,
All right, we're into the home straight now. Question
And it's-
15 sits with you, Kernaz.
oh.
16-17 season saw Palace sign very few players, but they spent around £40 million, incredibly, on those few players. Which player cost a record £25 million?
Okay, this must be Benteke.
No.
What? You're just lying now.
Anyone going to steal?
16, 17 season.
Still Mamadou Sakho.
Correct. Chris Clark, 10 points. DR, 5.5. Nick, 2.
I'm searching this up.
Do
This is false.
what you want.
So 16, 17 season.
So question 16, this sits with Chris Clark. You can really, this is going to take a lot. DR, you're going to have to steal every question remaining.
All right.
Three questions and answer the final one correctly to win this. Otherwise, Clark is going to romp home. Nick is just, he's out of it, really.
Let's do Chris Stumble.
But here we go. Question 16, Chris Clark. Which left back did Palace allow to join Barnsley on a free transfer in 16-17?
Johnny Parr.
Huh?
Incorrect. It's available for a
Still.
Yeah.
Oh my. All right. So I have to get this right. So 16, 17 season. Are you sure it's 16, 17? So left to join Barnsley
certainly.
on. Jack Hunt.
He was a right back, left way before.
Oh,
that.
left back.
Correct.
Oh,
Any suggestions, Nick? Because Kernaz has failed miserably.
So left back 15-16 went to Barnsley.
16-17 went to Barnsley.
16-17 season went to
I really want you
Barnsley.
to get some more
Left
points.
back.
I can think of one
Is
other.
that,
Can I steal
Can I
again?
steal from myself or from Nick?
Dean Moxey was earlier than that, wasn't it?
It was. It's not Moxie. I'm not allowing any more answers.
decade,
On that.
aren't
That's the last player I would have said, so fair enough.
Everyone gets a point then. No one got it right.
No one gets
no
it.
one gets a point.
Oh,
It was
that's
Zeki Friars, for God's sake, and I realise thinking of him as a
Oh.
left back might have been distracting because he wasn't really a footballer.
It wasn't a player, yeah.
No, exactly.
I'm looking right now. He did not. Oh, okay.
Yeah. yeah. You prove
Carry
anything
on
with
the
facts.
Yeah, exactly. So question 17, it's yours, Nick, to try and save some kind of.
Can I just say that I've been the one accused of cheating, and DR's blatantly said, "Yeah, I'm looking right."
Yeah,
now."
I'm looking at it right now because I want to see like 16, 17. It doesn't say that.
So
Yeah, I
have
mean,
you
it's
got the
too late now for him
16-17
to-
season up? On
It's
your
too
screen?
late for him to win. Don't worry about it. Let's move this on to a conclusion, please, gents. Only one player attracted a fee for Palace in terms of outgoing players in 16-17, and he joined Marseille for 2.7 million.
Oh,
Which player was it? Nick?
still.
No, give us a chance. But his name was completely gone. I can picture him. He was it was the goalkeeper.
No, it's not.
Steve Mondonda.
Correct. Nick has got it correct. Well done,
Do I
mate. A
get
little
10
bit
points
of
for that?
Can we swear on here?
no.
Oh.
You already have twice without realising it. No, Nick's up to 3 points. Some respectability there. Final question for DR. Clarkie's obviously romped home with 10 points, but DR, can you bring it to within 2.5 points? Sorry, 3.5 points. By answering this question, the wonderful, the magnificent Fraser Campbell left Palace in that 2016-17 season. How many goals did he score for Palace?
What sort of question is this? I thought we did transfers. Why are you telling me how many goals Campbell? Probably
Transfer
like.
related.
All right. So 6.
Not far off, but incorrect. Any guesses?
Must be 9.
So what's the question again? Sorry?
Oh, Jesus. It was 8. Correct. Well done, Chris. You get an extra 2 points right at the end. So there you go. That was a fun quiz, wasn't it?
Yeah, I love this.
Started to eke out there. But Chris Clark, you've absolutely smashed that. You win with 12 points. DR, you got 5.5, but you had 5.5 for quite a while there. About halfway and didn't get any more. Nick, you got 3 points. But well done, everybody. I enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed playing along at home. And we'll get back to looking at some more news in just a moment before Nick speaks.
I've just been messaged by Patrick O'Connor, who says, "Can you play me in a quiz next?"
Yeah, we'll then line up a Patrick versus Nick because, Patrick's already beaten me in a quiz that Mike ruined by having almost entirely wrong answers.
Wrong answers.
The wrong answer quiz, which is almost impossible to get right. So anyway, it's just coming up to 10:30. The only news we've had really whilst we've been on air is obviously the recent announcement that Jason Lukailo has joined. Who was it? Doncaster on loan for the remainder of the season, I assume.
Yep.
Still waiting to see if the Wickham to Sheffield Wednesday thing happens, and there's some suggestion, some rumour that the Ferguson deal has died, but not confirmed that. I think it was potentially the Daily Mail who had said it, apparently, that the move had broken down. Obviously, whilst Dom was on with us at around 9:45, Palace officials were still very much there hoping to do that deal, but some reports saying that deal is now dead. Chris, you got your hand up.
Yeah, there's also been breaking news, which is the result of a quiz on the Back of the Nest podcast, which is that Chris Clark has won the quiz.
I mean, for that, possibly Chris Clark will be on a suspension from the show.
We're not doing a quiz with him anymore. That's it.
It's nothing worse than someone gloating. I mean, I might possibly be some sort of person that gloats. So I'm hoping the chaps will be able to gather some of your questions and comments for me for the next 20 minutes or so. But there's not an awful lot happening. Hopefully, we're looking to get confirmation as to whether or not that deal is still alive. But basically, if that deal dies, I think this show dies, if we're quite honest. We'll call it quits. But for the time being, let's have a look at some of your content. But I'm also aware that we have a couple of voice clips, and I know Mikey's got at least one of those lined up for me. So I'm talking in a way that will allow Mikey to get into a position to play that when I say, "Hey, Mikey, can you play that?"
Is Mike still here?
Hi, it's Gordon Luke here. Who's to blame for our terrible transfer window? Is it Doogie? Is it Parish? Is it the Yanks? Is it Roy? Who do you think really is at fault? And why do we, 2.5 million in the last 3 windows? What is the problem? Please discuss and let's see where we're at.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Luke. Always good to hear from Luke. And it's a good question. We sort of started to touch on that topic with Dom earlier on. Dom was talking a lot about the fact that the Palace have been a little bit unlucky, but I guess also made the point that those involved in the deals breaking down or not happening need to probably also assess how they went about things. And I think without copping out a little bit, the answer is there's a lot of people to look at and question in these circumstances. And I think I think there's a bit of everybody involved in the failures. Personally, I think I've never really felt more that the club has a board and a director of football that are on a very different page in a very different direction to a manager. That's my perception. If you listen, and again, it's dangerous to read a little bit too much into what people say sometimes when they're talking in press conferences and that sort of stuff. But the language that Roy uses, the body language that he exudes, and in particular the most recent press conference, I found very unsettling indeed. I just get that feeling that he's just not on the same page as the club. But having said that, it's pretty widely understood that at least one of the American owners wants out, and there possibly is an agreement that if one goes, they both go. And as such, that must be incredibly disruptive for anyone involved at the club trying to plan anything long term, because the backing and the decisions aren't there, and people are taking to social media to attack Parish or attack various people. And the truth of the matter is, there's possibly nothing that those individuals can do about it. Whilst there is this, sort of, but I don't use, well, I'm going to use the word mess behind the scenes. That's how I feel. And I've got, you've got to understand that's lots of people have that view and views around that area. And we're all basing it on things that we read and we assume. There's not many people who are directly privy to the correct information, the accurate information. There's a limited amount of people who are behind those negotiating tables and in those rooms. So we are still indulging in speculation, but it doesn't feel like a connected club at the moment. And I think that's reflected in the frustration in the fan base as well.
I think what some of the problem is they came in and it was to take the club forward and to build a new stand, which we haven't heard anything about. But in their defence, with not Jim Bowen, but the other Bowen, we didn't know at the time that he didn't really want to come to Palace. And also we didn't know that Ferguson at West Brom would have a knack knee. So, that's not really anybody's fault till the medical, is it? They've tried, and the fact is, we're still getting conflicting reports on whether that deal's over or whether it's still ongoing and they're still trying to negotiate that one. But nobody could have foreseen those, so it wasn't for the want of trying.
Well, come on, Nick. This Ferguson medical happened about 2 days ago. And I mean, as I've said, we needed a right back since the summer. I mean, if we were so serious about a right back, then this medical would have happened earlier on. We would have submitted a bid earlier on and we wouldn't go through this right now. We're what? Less than half an hour left of the window and we still haven't got a right back. I mean, that's on the board, and that's on. So you look at. So I'm going to break this down. So first of all, Roy Hodgson, he said how he's called out the American owners. So it seems like the American owners are to blame for the lack of funds. There's that, and then there's Dougie Friedman, who, I mean, I don't know if he's struggling as he hasn't been given the funds from the American owners and Steve Parish. I don't know what's going on, but it seems like we've only got Scott Banks and Jake Tosson, so we've barely spent any money. And I don't know if you guys remember, but we got a bit of the Wan-Bissaka money early as well. So what's happening with the Wan-Bissaka money? Because everyone thought that we would invest that in the January transfer window as we needed players. However, we're at this stage where how much money have we actually spent? I mean, there's going to be loan fees for Tosson, but on transfer fees, how much have we spent? Hardly anything. So I feel like that you have to look at the board. You have to look at people who are in control of the money, because I feel like if the money was there, Dougie would spend it. And I wouldn't blame Roy for this, because Roy's been begging for players for a very long time and we haven't delivered it.
Yeah, well, there's obviously again, I'll call it speculation that Roy may be begging for players, but he also might be turning players away when they're offered to him because they're not the ones he was begging for. But whether that's true or not, people have to decide for themselves.
Transfer news.
Oh, you've got transfer news?
Yeah, Connor Wickham is gone out on loan to Sheffield Wednesday.
It was one that we were expecting. So good for him to go out and get some games. Nick, I know you want to jump in, but just on DR's point, I want to just point out that DR did join just as Dom and I were probably talking about that very topic about where that money's gone in terms of we obviously did a deal to get the Wan-Bissaka money up front. And we talked through the fact that there were certain deals lined up that would have taken care of that money and would have enabled us to do those deals that just didn't work, with only the Ferguson deal sort of hanging by a thread that might account for some of it. So the answer to that is technically the money is there to spend. and has not been spent yet. Some of it might get spent on Ferguson if that deal goes ahead. It might not if it has failed.
Matthew,
Nick, you didn't want to jump in.
Yeah, Matthew Smith on our Facebook feed is speculating that we must have a new striker coming in if we're letting Wickham go. I don't know how good that is, but they're also talking about other players that we've bought in previous windows that shows perhaps it isn't that bad. We got Gaeta, we got Cahill, we put the faith in IU. So we have had some good transfers, but just not this time round.
Kurnas?
Yeah, we've got a comment on YouTube about the blame question. So who do you think is to blame? And one of them, so Battlefront said Parish, Friedman, Americans, obviously, and also this was a funny one. How has he also said how has Connor Wickham not failed a medical and Nathan Ferguson has?
Sorry, I was on mute laughing at that one. It's a good point. There you go.
And also, he's asked us, can we talk about how Connor leaving the club? I mean, he wants us to talk about that, and I think it's a good point in terms of leading up to this window. It seemed like Connor Wickham was going. However, right now, how many strikers do we have? We only have Benteke, Tosun, and Ayew. One of them are injured. Let's say one of them gets injured. Like it seems like Tosun's injured. We aren't in the greatest position. I mean, I don't think Wickham needs game time, but I feel like we still needed to bring a replacement in if Wickham was to leave, because 1 or 2 injuries and we've got crisis up front as well. It's like we're lacking depth in every position when it comes to it. I think the midfield is the only real strongest point, but fullbacks and up front, now that Wickham's gone, is risky. It is risky business from the club.
Chris?
What if the sun does come up tomorrow?
Oh.
Yeah, I know, but equally, we're on 30 points with a fair number of games to go. I really take. I mean, so Croydon Luke, who asked the question, is a good mate of mine. Stands quite near us quite a lot of the time at games, and we argue about this in the pub all the time. Frankly, I suspect that between him and me, we drink fewer pints than Connor Wickham does before his medicals.
I'm not really
and yet he still
sure
gets
that
through
you
it.
can say that. Come on, mate.
I said suspect. I said suspect. That means it's legally defensible. And by just to be clear, Back of the Nest does not endorse the views of Chris Clark, who just speculated that he suspects that.
Can we get the word unnecessarily speculated as well?
Unnecessarily speculated. This point.
Yeah, well, look, just to make a point to you as well, saying 30 points in a different voice to add emphasis doesn't hide the fact that we've won 3 games in 17 either. When you actually think about it in those terms, it is concerning. We don't lose a huge amount of games in the
look up and look down.
But I know, obviously, the whole glass half full, glass half empty argument, all that kind of stuff. But we aren't in the magnificent form that people keep talking about. We're actually in quite poor form. It's been great to keep picking up points, but we have got to do well. This was our opportunity, this window, to do something about that, to give us that extra boost to get us home, because the fixtures don't get too easy after the next few. We've got some really difficult games coming up. And ultimately, we start talking about the blame game. We could be talking about blaming people for something quite catastrophic rather than just a little bit of social media frustration for not doing deals.
I'll take the point, but before we move on, let's just remember that people were really annoyed that we didn't sign Dominic Solanke, and let's look back at how that's gone at Bournemouth. I think we were quite fortunate to, quotes, miss out.
Yeah, but it was Roy who wanted Solanke. But anyway, I don't want to get into that too much. But you can pick any transfer you like, and sort of, and half of them will be good and half of them would have gone badly. And the truth is, you don't know how the player would have played in a different system at a different club under a different manager. There's fairly strong evidence that Solanke was highly rated and is not going to deliver based on his performances at Bournemouth. But then there's a lot of people struggling at Bournemouth at the moment. And I don't know if you saw the comments from Ryan Fraser fairly recently about he essentially came out and said he hadn't been trying because he wasn't in the right sort of mental place. So, there's some real concerns at that club, and you've got to factor all those things in when you think about it. So you can take that position and sort of go, everyone was angry about not signing Solanke and everybody was wrong, but there's no evidence of that because you can't prove a negative. Anyway, there's more people want to speak. I'm not sure if Nick and DR was first, but I'll let you fight it out.
I got bad news. Should I say that? It seems like Ferguson is done. David Ornstein from the Athletic, he's a very credible source. It seems like he's saying Nathan Ferguson to Palace is off. And yeah, CPFC incomings are done. So it's done. We're not bringing any other players in.
There you go.
That is so depressing and questions serious. I mean, this has to be the worst window since we've got promoted. Has to be.
Without doubt. And again, in terms of sources, you can't get much better than the guys working at the Athletic at the moment. I'd be wrong if I didn't point that out and thank Dom for his time earlier on. That Dom's writing for the Athletic now. Please check out all of his articles. I'm aware that you have to pay for the Athletic, but it's well worth doing so, in my opinion. So do check it out. Some absolutely amazing journalism going on there, and it's a fantastic site, isn't it, Dio? You're a subscriber.
Yeah, I mean, they have all types of sports on there. Premier League, they also have basketball, NBA, everything. It's a brilliant site.
Do they have Kabaddi?
What?
Do they have Kabaddi? Do you know what Kabaddi is? Let's not talk about Kabaddi.
No.
Just because we've had an awful window and we're signing nobody, let's not make this a Kabaddi podcast quite yet. I'll think about it next season.
On the subject of no transfers, John Cook's come up with a good question over there on the Periscope thing. Do you think, panel, the atmosphere will be affected tomorrow by a lack of action in the transfer window? I mean, will it be muted tomorrow? What do you reckon?
I do, but I think it's not the only thing that will affect the atmosphere tomorrow. I think things will be very difficult for anyone who spends any time reading about Palace on social media for a start, given events today. But I'll be really interested to see. I think there'll be some empty seats tomorrow, and I do think it'll be a bit flat. But I think, as I say, I think there's probably more to it than that. I think we've not been inspired by a lot of the home football. We've not been inspired by a lot of the first halves, and now we've got a situation that's probably compounded because there's no excitement really. The only signing we have made for the first team is out injured for another 3 weeks. So, things do not feel good right now, I have to say.
A certain wag on Twitter has said we've got no signings because Steve Parish and Browett are in Parliament Square at the moment. I don't know if there's any truth in that.
No politics on this show. No politics on this show. Just to get that in there before we go too far. Hey, how you doing, Chris? You still got your hand up there, mate?
Yeah, I have. Just to say that I actually don't think things are going to be so downbeat tomorrow. Let's see what happens. But realistically, we're going to have to drum there. We're going to be singing our hearts out. I know you will, same as I will. We'll be doing the Poznan in the Homesdale. We'll be celebrating when Jordan Ayew scores his second goal against Sheffield United. They're a decent team. So, if we don't win, fine. But let's go into this with a bit of optimism and a bit of bullishness. I think we've got a decent chance against this lot. I mean, I went there. I saw us lose to them away. Let's win at home.
I'm not sure you saying that was going to help, but
Yeah.
good on you anyway. Enjoy the optimism.
Let's see.
Let's have some final words because obviously with the business is very much done. We won't be seeing any surprises by the sounds of it. It's over and done with for tonight. So we won't drag this show out. We'll try and cover a few more bits, but let's get some just kind of final reaction on what is an absolutely disastrous window for all of Chris Clark's optimism. I'm just, I'm sick to the stomach with it, really. I am. And I think everybody has a right to be very frustrated with those in charge over how things have gone in this window. An absolute ridiculous situation to be in. But hey, the new players coming back are like, they're like new signings, right? Yeah. DR, come on, mate, reaction.
Absolute shambles. I mean, from the beginning, these players, we needed right back from months ago, left it to the last minute. This happens. And what I'm interested about is what Roy's going to say tomorrow after tomorrow's game. He's been very public about about transfers and how he needs players. So I'm interested to see what he says. I'm not as optimistic as Chris. Whether I think the stadium will be a bit toxic, and there's no surprise there. I feel like there might be certain people who might maybe make chance against the owners, or something. I won't be surprised if something like that happens, because people are really, really annoyed, and rightly so. And I guess I'm lost for words. Like, I think Roy's going to go in the summer. I think it's all done now. I think now he hasn't got the backing. It doesn't matter what happens in summer, he's gone. And it's scary times. It really is scary times with the owners that we've got, with the money that we got from Wan-Bissaka that's not being spent. It's a joke. I mean, even from Palace's standards, we can joke about or whatever, but this is something else. I mean, we're trying to be an established Premier League club, which we are, but we're our own enemies right now by not investing in the squad and trying to progress. And you look at players like Wilfried Zaha, you're trying to sell him to stay at the club. Why should Will stay at the club? I mean, you're not backing the team so they could get the quality players and go on to the next level. So I could see Wilf leaving in the summer. You might think this is an overreaction, but I saw that I still feel like even before this window, Wilf could leave in the summer.
Oh, definitely.
It's scary times. It is scary times. I think we'll stay up, but yeah, let's see what happens, I guess.
There we
Lee
go. I think
Peltier,
obviously,
sorry,
Nick,
Lee Peltier has just signed for West Brom. He's a right back. People are still saying, "Oh, there could be a slight chance. Could be a slight chance," but who never knows? Who was that guy that we got in at 11 o'clock? Must have been about 5 or 6 years ago, after we had a really, really quiet night, and it was the most underwhelming signing ever. I can't remember the guy's name.
I can't remember, but I admire your optimism. But I'm not in a place where I want to think about it right now. But yes, they've signed a right back. That's probably to cover the fact that their current right back, who we tried to buy, is injured. So with a long-term knee injury. So there you go.
What gets my goat is that I'm struggling to pay for my season ticket, and I'm investing money in the club to be able to go and watch them. Why can't the people that own the club invest money for the people that pay money to go and watch them as well? I just feel a bit cheated. That's how I'm feeling at the moment.
Of course, and obviously these are raw reactions. Chris, yours was positive. We kind of heard your rally cry and hoped for positivity tomorrow. I think Nick and DR are reflecting more how I feel at the moment. I'll let Nick and DR check for some last comments on the socials. DR, you still got your hand up. Did you want to jump in and make another quick point?
No, I just left it up there. That's how shocked I am. I'm not leaving my hand down.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, yeah. Last check for some comments on the socials. See if we've got anything to address. I just want to read out one WhatsApp message, and it's from Sam Hesketh from the preview show and some of the one review show and some transfer pods as well. So he's out for his birthday drinks, and he's out with Miserable Dave, who preview listeners will know all about. And he says, so it's Sam speaking. Thanks for coming out to my birthday drinks, Dave. And Miserable Dave is Wickham off the bench is our best option. So there you go. That's I think that, that reflects.
No more.
Yeah, there we go. So I don't know about you guys, but I think I'll be steering clear of social media for 24 hours and even longer if we don't get some sort of result against Sheffield United tomorrow at Selhurst Park. But hey, I'll be there cheering on the boys and hoping for the best. And let's hope we never see another window quite like this. But we've had a few in a row for a while, haven't we? So disappointing stuff. DR, anything more from you?
Well, we got a comment from Battlefront. Deadline day, incoming 0, outcoming 6. He seems like he's not happy, and really that's it. And he also commented that Belfast Telegraph is reporting that Hodgson is leaving at the end of the season, but he said that's not very credible. And there will be reports coming out like that in the coming days.
I mean,
sure.
Personally, I consider it quite likely because whether you're a fan of Roy or not, it doesn't seem like it's a healthy situation. He won't feel that he's had the support that he asked for. He's already talked openly about the fact that why would he wants a certain degree of assurances before he would agree another deal. And honestly, hand on heart, I think it would probably suit all parties because I genuinely believe that another season, and I think it could turn really unpleasant. And I don't want to see someone as honourable and as decent as Roy Hodgson have to leave this club under a cloud, I think it would be best to sort of get to the end of the season and mutually agree to part ways and try and look back on what he's done over the last few years with real fondness and respect. That's how I feel about that. So there's some good comments there. Obviously, Nick, you got your hand up, and Chris as well. Not sure who was first. Fight.
Just to add to that, Chris, because it fits in. Daniel Babington Brown on Facebook says, fully expect Roy not to take up the option of a contract extension and walk in the summer. He's done a great job with what he's had to work with for the last 2 years, but he hasn't once been given players to improve our deteriorating squad. Pretty depressing, really. And Bradley Squire says, Parish out. Patrick Sloat says, I think Roy is done after Saturday.
Well, there you go. And there's a lot in there I understand, and some I agree with. I have to say I'm not a bored out kind of person, because I think there's some difficult constraints to work under. But I think questions have to be asked of people who are doing these deals without a shadow of a doubt, because it's another huge failure, and there's no hiding from that. I do think in terms of Roy walking, I think, like I say, I still think probably it would be a mutual thing anyway. That's my gut feeling on that. And I don't like the sort of blanket statement that Roy hasn't had the players, because I think Roy has had some players that he's chosen not to use, and the reasons he's chosen not to use them probably don't really stand up to any degree of significant analysis. But that's just an opinion of mine. I think he's had some backing, and I think part of the reason he hasn't had full backing is that when he has been given players that he might not necessarily know, he hasn't taken any risk to kind of use them. I'm thinking of not even giving Camarasta a taste. I'm thinking of the way Mayer has been sidelined and treated, and now we have nearly 2 seasons of him not really getting a run of games and not really playing in a consistent position. And we're obviously judging him accordingly. And it's very hard for players to shine in those circumstances. He might not be the right player for us, but those are examples of creative players that perhaps don't perform as well in a functional system for Roy than others do. And that's where I get a little frustrated in terms of the transfers. Chris next, and then back to Nick.
Everything is not for the best in the best of all possible worlds. That's not where we are. Nonetheless, we are in a pretty healthy position, probably the best position our club has ever been in. And the current manager and the current owners have delivered considerable success that I think that match-going, ticket-buying fans like us need to understand, acknowledge, respect, and not say thank you, because that's not how it is. But we need to put this in a context when we express our frustrations. I'm frustrated too. There's lots of things I'm not happy about. Why is Jarvis not barking, Nick? But seriously, this is where we are as a club right now. I think Roy will leave with respect and thanks, and then it's a question of what happens next and where do we move on to. And the question, he's going to be a hard act to follow, because actually he's delivered solid, reliable, no threat of relegation for a number of years. And I don't think that there's anyone who can fill that job without that fear. So I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see.
I think you're talking absolute horse poop, but I'm not really have enough time to deal with that. So we'll pick that up another time, Chris. But I respect your right to an opinion. I just don't agree with it. But very eloquently put. Thanks, Chris. DR, finally, I think you got another comment before we end.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments. We've got Al Malone yanks out, Battlefront yanks out. All of these are coming from YouTube. We've got Tom Goodwin. Is Sainsbury's still open? Does David Nugent need a pint of milk? Something, anything. William Russell Harvard has asked a question. Not asked a question. He's made a statement saying, I don't think Paris should leave, because at the end of the day, he can only work with the budget the Americans give him. That's a fair point. But another thing, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, now's a good time. Make sure to subscribe. We've got lots of content coming out there. And yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much to everybody. And Nick, finally from you.
I'll just say, don't forget, listen to Love Sport. A few people, Albert of this parish has said Zaha's going to be off in the summer.
Of course he is.
for-
Yeah. That's
for
on the
60
cards anyway.
million. And he reckons the new manager will come in and get given 50 million of that. Foz of Wisdom, why are we waiting till January the 30th to try and even get anybody? And Chewy Call said only Palace could end the window weaker than when it started.
Thank you very much indeed. Say there was an awful lot of contact tonight. So as I said before at the start of the show, first live show we've probably done in at least a couple of years since we were Homesdale Radio. So a few little bits here and there that we would hope to have done a little bit better, but it was great to have you all on board. And hopefully we do this in the future, it'll be much more interactive. We'll have people assigned to different comments and populate things as we go. But it was great to hear from all of you. Thank you so much for getting in touch. Sorry we couldn't bring you good news. We had a cowbell on standby to ring for when the transfers were announced. It just never happened. I think all we can really leave with is that little sense.
Hey.
And there it is. That would have been the noise.